Sorry it's been so long. It's almost Christmas. I've been doing craft fairs and I didn't want to stress myself out over Christmas trying to get videos out. But I have one more Christmas present left to make and I have time to film it. I'm just going to be making a hat with some Fair Isle patterns in it. I've got 3 different shades of blue here. These are all 100% wool. 4 ounces. I don't know. 2 ply. Okay. So it's a little bit thinner than a worsted weight. But I've got 3 different shades of blue. I have both are 16-inch, a size, I think 6. That's not gonna focus. I have a 6 for the ribbing and then a 7 for the hat. This is gonna be my main color just because I have more of it. And I'm not sure. I'd like to use this one, but I don't think I have enough. And I'm going to cast on 90 stitches. I'm just gonna do a long tail cast on, put on 90 stitches, and do a knit 2 purl 1 cuff. So I've done 12 rows on my cuff. You can really do as many as you want to. So my next row, I'm gonna do a really simple Fair Isle. So my next 2 rows, I'm gonna do 1 solid row each of my contrast colors, just to work them on. Okay, I finished the first row of my first contrast color. I've got the larger size 7 needles all worked on. I still have my first color, and now my second color trailing at the beginning, and now I'm going to do 1 solid row of my lighter contrast color. Okay, so I finished 1 just solid row of each of my contrast colors, so everything is all attached and ready to do my color work. I'm going to pause here for a second. You see all of these loose pieces back here? You won't normally have that, but because I'm using wool yarn, the cat has always been attracted to it and chews on it. So I'll be knitting along and then all of a sudden my yarn ends. So I will work all of those in when I'm done. So just try to ignore those. It's got a bit of a split there because I attached both of the yarns in the same place, and your stitches are going to be loose kind of in that spot as you're working it, but after when you work in your ends you can tighten that back up. So don't worry about that. So I think I'm just going to do 1 more solid row of my main color on the end to pull that in, and then I will start with the fun patterns. Okay, and I am ready to start my Fair Isle patterns. They usually look like this. They're just done out in a chart. Okay, so for this first pattern, I'm going to use these 2 colors. This should be attached, but the cat ate it there, so I'll reattach it when I need the dark blue. And I'm going to do 1, I'm just going to do every other. So a big thing to watch when you're doing Fair Isle is just trying to make sure these don't get twisted and tangled up. You can stop and untwist them if you need to, but it's easier if you keep 1 on the top there, and keep 1 underneath. Okay, so I finished the first row of my pattern. So for the second row, I'm going to do 3 of each. So I'll start with my main color, do 1 2, 3, and my contrast. 1, 2, 3. Now, when you're doing something that has multiples of each color before you change, you want to make sure not to pull it too tight, or else you won't have enough of the back piece here. So then when the hat's all done and they pull it on and stretch it, it'll be all puckered if you don't leave enough back there for it to stretch out properly. And when you're choosing which pattern you're going to put on, something to keep in mind is what the repeat number is. And that's, like for this pattern, oops, I only did 2 there. Yeah. For this pattern to fully repeat, it's 6 stitches. And so I have 90 stitches in my hat, so I know that you can divide 9 by 6 evenly. And that's why 90 is such a good number for Fair Isle, because it's divisible by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 8, 9, 10, and 12, I think. So if you're doing a hat with 90 stitches, pretty much any pattern that you come up with, any of the simple ones at least, will fit into it evenly. And that gives you a lot of freedom because you can pick them as you go. Okay, so there's the second row of my pattern done. So now I'm going to do the same as the first row and do every other, but I'm going to make sure the center one is a contrast. So like here I have 3 of the medium blue. So I will do medium blue, light blue. So make sure the light blue is in the middle of the medium. And then on the top of the 3 light blues, make sure it's medium blue. And you only have to do that the first time, because after that it just repeats. Medium, light, medium, light, medium, light, all the way around. Okay, so I just finished the 3rd row on this pattern, and I realized I did it wrong. I'm not even sure what I did there. But you know what? It's still a repeating pattern, and it's the same all the way through. So I think I'm just going to leave it. So I'm going to do 1 solid row of the main color, and that'll give me a line between this one and my next pattern. Okay, so there's my first pattern row done. I did the solid blue on the end to finish it up. Did not come out the way I wanted it to. It looks like an H, but you know what, that's fine. But that does bring us to using charts. So here's a pretty one. It's pretty simple. So when you're going to be reading a chart, you can see the numbers start. Okay, it's not going to focus. But you can see the numbers start over here. That's because when you're knitting it up, you work from your right to your left. And so that's how you do it. You just start and you work row by row, follow your pattern, and it turns into that. Here's some nice simple patterns. First thing I want to do is count how many stitches are in the repeat. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and that will fit evenly into my 90, so I can do that one. And then I will do 2 solid rows of whichever one I'm going to use for that. My next pattern row, so I've got the lighter one and the main color. I've used a lot of main color, so I'm going to use the light blue and the darker blue, and that'll be a lot easier for you to see too. And I'm going to have to reattach that because that was one of the dead ends there. So this one will just be put away for now. Try to keep it out of the way. And I'm going to do 2 solid rows of the dark blue. Just finished that row, so now I want to do 3 of the dark and 1 of the light, and make sure you get those lined up right. So the 1 white will go on the top of the 3 white. I don't know what happened here, but I have a couple of extra stitches. 2 extra stitches, and I'm not sure where those came from, so I'm just going to have to kind of fudge that back. I might decrease one, and then decrease one later on to get it to come out even. But I'll have to count my stitches and make sure I have the 90. But my next row is going to be just a solid dark one, which I am doing so just a solid row of my inside color. Okay, so I finished the 1 row of the light blue, and I figured out why I had 2 extra stitches. It's because 4 does not go into 90 evenly. So I tried to do 2 different pattern rows, and I screwed them both up. But anyway, you get the idea. So I am just going to do a couple more rows of patterns. I've got 1 pattern, half a pattern. I'll probably do 1 or 2 more. Since I've got those 2 extra stitches, I will probably have to fudge this pattern a little bit, but I'll make sure I do the math properly on the rest of them. And one more thing, as you're going along, I'm only using the darker blue and the lighter blue, which means the end of the medium blue is back here still. So what you want to do every few rows is take one of the colors that you're currently using and kind of wrap it around the one that you're not using, so that it's not like a huge loop. It kind of keeps it snug up against your work. I have finished the Fair Isle part. Now for some reason, the beginning of the pattern kind of moved over. I'm not sure why it does that, but that's not a big deal. You can see this one where I had the 2 extra stitches, I just kind of fudged it in there. So I'm all done the Fair Isle. I'm just going to do the top piece now. I'm going to do it in the solid medium, so I'm going to cut off the dark blue and the light blue, and I'll leave a good sized tail to work those in. You can do Fair Isle patterns on the top, but it's really hard to keep track of your pattern and the decreases, and you definitely want to use a pattern because it's really hard to keep that all straight. I mean, you saw how many times I messed up on this part, and that's no decreases. So I'm going to do the top piece now. Okay, so for the decrease in the top, what you're going to do is you're going to take the number of stitches you have, which is 90, and I'm going to make sure I do it right this time. 90 divided by 6 is 15. So I'm going to have 6 15 stitch sections around here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to knit 13, and then the 14th and the 15th I'm going to knit together. So I'll knit 13, knit 2 together, and then the next row I'm just going to solid knit around. And so the next row will be knit 12, knit 2 together. So it'll decrease, but you're going to decrease every other row until you are down to half of your original number. So roughly 45. It won't be an even number, but as close as that as you can get it. And then you're going to continue decreasing every row. I'm going to knit 13, knit 2 together 6 times. It'll take me around once, and then I'm going to knit 1 solid row. Now I'm going to knit 12, knit 2 together 6 times, will take me around, and then knit 1 solid row. Okay, so as I'm going along here, my hat's getting pretty long. I think it was 25 rows in here. I probably shouldn't have done that many. So I'm going to start decreasing every row now. It'll give it more of a flat top, but that's fine. I'm almost done. I don't really have enough stitches to keep going on the round needle, so I'm going to switch over to my double point. So I finished the hat, and despite my mess ups, it came out fine, and my aunt loved it. So remember, just because you make some mistakes doesn't mean the project is lost.